Hi, I'm Chris, and welcome to the Celtic Cooking. Today we're studying things from the Isle of Man. Bonnag. Okay, it's like bonnet. Bonnag. Bonnag is a wonderful bread that this is Michelle, and Michelle's going to show us how to make a bonnag. I'm not familiar with them, so let's get going on it.
All right.
Oh, but first we have some thank yous. That's right, my thank you notes. We're going to thank the Arizona Commission on the Arts, Flagstaff Arts Council, Flagstaff Community Foundation, Coconino County, and of course the City of Flagstaff. So thank you so much. Without their support and ideas and I guess just plain support, that's what keeps us all going with our incredible ideas and having fun of what we're doing. And today we're playing in the kitchen.
Playing in the kitchen.
Yes.
Okay. So we are making the bonnag as she indicated, and we are going to mix some things together. We're going to preheat the oven already to 350. We're going to cook this about an hour, but we're going to walk you through all of the steps. We're going to start with 3 cups of flour, a cup of sugar. It looks like 1 teaspoon of baking soda and a pinch of Celtic sea salt. We've got 2 teaspoons of butter, and then we have 1.5 teaspoons mixed spices. So in here we've got cinnamon, nutmeg, and clove. Then we've got some dried raisins. Well, raisins are dried anyway, but we've got some raisins, and we've got a 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla and a cup of buttermilk. So all of those things are going to be mixed together, and then we're going to roll it out, knead it a little bit, and we're going to put it in Grandma's cast iron skillet. It's going to be preheated a little bit before we put the bread in there. There's some flour in there so we prevent sticking, but we're going to get started. So I've got the 3 cups of flour. We've got 1 cup of sugar, the baking soda and Celtic salt, and the spices. I'm going to go ahead and mix that up because traditionally you always mix your dry ingredients before you add your wet ingredients. So we're just going to give that a good mix, incorporate all of your spices. And it sort of smells already like pumpkin pie with those spices in there.
It does.
So give that a good little mix. Okay, then we're going to put our butter in, and it's softened, which is exactly what needs to happen. I'm going to kind of break that up, I would assume, because this is a modern recipe for an old traditional bread that I would assume you kind of want it to be pea-sized if you can get any of that butter popping up. You don't want it to be big and gloppy. So that looks pretty good. Then I am going to pour in the vanilla and buttermilk. And buttermilk I often use in other recipes. And when I was growing up, my mom, who's from Texas, not anywhere close to Scotland or overseas at all, would drink buttermilk by the glass.
Oh, I've heard of that.
And
I haven't done that.
I was not excited about that. It kind of...
But you actually tried it.
I did try it, and every once in a while I'll take, a little bit more. But I think it was what put me off of it was the glass was just coated with that heavy buttermilk, and that didn't look very appetizing at the time. But as I grew older, my palate expanded a little bit. So
you actually developed a taste for it?
I developed a taste. I wouldn't say I crave it, but I have tasted it. So I'm going to get my hands in here and get this a little bit better incorporated.
Beginning to come together.
It is. I don't want to put the raisins in quite yet, because I want to make sure this flour and the dry ingredients all get mashed in together. And
Now
yes,
it's
I
sticking
did.
to your hands a lot.
It is, and I did wash my hands before I started this. I wanted to let everybody know. So I might get a little bit of flour that I have on my board for
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 when you're
kneading. Yeah, and just get it on my hands a little bit so it doesn't stick as much. I still have quite a bit in the bottom. So do you know the history of this bread?
A little bit. I know it comes from the Isle of Man, or at least that's where it was prominent. And in reading, you never know if you can believe everything that you read on the internet, but the dried fruits, like the raisins, weren't an addition, a typical traditional addition, until a little later on in history. It's a more modern day thing. And same with some of the flour. It's very similar to, it used to be more of an oat cake, I think. Now you're adding the raisins now.
I am adding the raisins.
Because the dough was coming together.
It's coming together. I've got just a little bit of the flour mixture at the bottom. You want to make sure your fruit, and you can use, like you said, right now we're using raisins, but I could imagine cranberries in here or any other dried fruit.
Chopped apricots even.
Yes, that came to mind. With the spices, that would be really good.
Really good. And you could play with the spices too.
Yeah, there are, in the information that I saw, there were 6 or 7 different recipes.
Wow.
Starting from the old traditional recipes that didn't have any leavening in it, so it was more of a flatbread rather than something that you that rises at all.
In fact, one of the things I read on the internet was that it used to be kind of the leftovers that stayed on the griddle a little too long.
We all have leftovers.
Right.
Okay, I'm gonna put I put the skillet in the oven to preheat a little bit, and while that's preheating, I'm just gonna keep kneading this in. I don't think I want all this flour in there, but I'm just gonna knead it a little bit more, make sure all of those.
So you want it to hold together and actually be shaped like a loaf.
Yes, but it's not a traditional loaf. It's more of a circle. So you do want it to hold its shape. You want it to have, I prepared for this by watching the Great British Baking Show.
Oh, very good.
And the, the bread week is always very popular on that show. And so I understand that in bread you need to have the little air bubbles, and that's how the leavening happens, because the gluten is released through those air bubbles. So we do have, with the baking soda, we've got that leavening agent in this bread.
And the buttermilk has some leavening agent.
Yep. So that looks
wonderful.
Looks good. As soon as we put it in the cast iron, we are going to brush some more buttermilk across the top. We're going to score it so it has a nice little cross, like a hot cross bun.
Oh.
And then we're going to cook it for about an hour. So
the buttermilk will help give it a bit of a crust.
Yes. You want a nice crunchy crust when you cut into it. And then you want it to be nice and soft inside. So I think that looks pretty good. Pretty round.
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to put that right in the middle. That looks good. Don't touch the cast iron. You could burn your hands. And we're going to nice.
Just slather the buttermilk all over.
Because who doesn't like extra calories on your bread?
Oh, this will go really good with Kerrygold butter.
Oh, yes. Of which I'm sure we are going to use on our finished product. Okay, I think that looks good. And then we have a knife right here. We're going to do just a little score across the top. Just in an X or a cross. There we go. And then we're going to pop it in the oven. And it's already preheated at 350 degrees.
And how long that's going to bake?
It's going to bake for about an hour. We want it to have a nice golden crust, and, you know, modern technology, we already have some prepared. It has a beautiful brown crust, and you can see the little bubbles in the bread. So that's what you want your finished product to look like.
Looks wonderful. Well, I'm sure we're going to get to taste this, I hope.
Of course, of course.
But thank you. Now we know a little bit more about Bonnag.
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 Yes.
Now I even know how to say it.
Well, thank you for having me here.
Thank you.